Euranet Plus Panorama is a weekly review of European news broadcast by our network of EU radio stations.
Welcome back, everyone, after the long summer recess. Member states were given until today, Friday the 30th of August, to put forward their nominations for the new College of Commissioners. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's goal of gender parity seems to be proving hard to come by, though, with only a handful of countries putting forward female candidates for the coming term. This contrasts sharply with her success last time around, highlights Belgium's RTBF, when almost half of her commissioners were women. So, is the Commission chief likely to accept that her new commission resembles a 1950s boardroom? Certainly not, says her spokesperson Eric Mamère.
What is absolutely clear is that the President stands by her conviction that in the modern world we need to have as many women as possible in positions of responsibility, and this is what underpinned her request to member states as expressed in the letter that she sent end of July. And she is in contact with member states on the formation of the new college, and you can rest assured that she is doing everything in her power in order to ensure that we have a well-balanced college with people who are competent for the role of commissioner and for a college that will include as many women as possible.
But the question is, when member states have the right to choose who represents them, what can she really do about it? One suggestion is that she will give more attractive portfolios to countries that have nominated a woman. This is likely to ruffle a few feathers, but it doesn't seem to worry Romania's commissioner nominee, Victor Negrescu, who is currently vice president of the European Parliament. Radio Romania reports.
I believe that Romania will get a relevant portfolio for our country. The fact that we have been having these discussions for a very long time, for several months already, puts us in a good position to obtain an important mandate for our country.
Last week, Christoph Hansen was formally confirmed as Luxembourg's commissioner nominee, says 100.3, with PM Luc Frieden insisting that he was simply our best candidate. Frieden also pointed out that not a single member state had so far complied with VDL's request to put forward two names, one man and one woman. And why?
We have done the same, because it would be a bit awkward for the other person, the one that isn't chosen. It is up to governments to propose candidates. It is not up to the Commission to pick one. Mrs. von der Leyen completely understands that this is why, so far, no Prime Minister has publicly proposed two candidates. We are simply doing what other countries are doing.
For his part, Slovenia's candidate, Tomáš Vesel, gives a slightly tongue-in-cheek response to the debate, as shared by RTV Slovenia.
It is not my place to discuss the procedure, because I'm neither to blame for it nor responsible for it. I am nonetheless disturbed by the constant feeling, which comes from within me and also from the media, that I am somehow at fault for not being a woman.
Vesel's name has been in the frame since April. He is the former president of Slovenia's Court of Auditors and seems to have his eye on the budget portfolio. But he will have his work cut out for him, as this is a popular post. Poland's Piotr Serafin, for one, thinks the job has his name on it. Poland's current ambassador to the EU tells Polski Radio why he would be a good fit in the budget role.
Firstly, for years, Poland has been the biggest beneficiary of the European Union budget. Thanks to the EU budget, a great deal has changed for the better in Poland. Secondly, I also believe that we are at a rather crucial moment in history, when there is a need for a significant increase in EU expenditure on defence. And these are undoubtedly priorities that are important from Poland's point of view. Of course, I will not be representing Poland in the European Commission, but these priorities are also close to my own heart.
Bulgaria, Belgium and Italy have dragged their heels somewhat, struggling with internal political issues. Former Bulgarian Prime Minister Boykov Borisov points out, though, that there is still plenty of time, and hints that the commissioner nomination is not top of Bulgaria's list of priorities right now. The country is currently preparing for yet another set of early elections in October, the 7th in the last 2 years.
През цялото това време върват консултации.
All this time, consultations are ongoing. Depending on the candidates, the portfolios are allocated. Then they are reshuffled. Male, female, gender equality. And only then does it go to the European Parliament, where the political parties and groups have to defend the commissioners who have come out of these groups. So we are not late right now, at least in factual terms. But in some ways, we are 3 years late, even 4. We have turned Bulgaria into something nobody takes any notice of, a divided country that for the 7th time cannot elect a government. Unfortunately, chaos reigns for the 4th year in a row, and it will reign on.
This said, Bulgaria may come up trumps in the end, says BNR, as there is a chance they may still put forward a woman. In other news, AMS notes that the fatal knife attack in Solingen, western Germany, last Friday, believed to have been committed by a Syrian national, has reignited the debate on migration in the country. Indeed, it could be used to strengthen the hand of far-right parties in several imminent regional elections. Friedrich Merz, leader of German opposition party the CDU, met with Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Tuesday. Merz, a conservative, is demanding a no-holds-barred response, calling, among other things, for asylum seekers from Syria and Afghanistan to be turned away at the German border. He cites EU rules in his bid to allow Germany to circumvent them.
So everyone who applies for asylum at Germany's external borders has already travelled at least one country too far in Europe, and that is why I am convinced that we can turn them away. If this is not possible for reasons of European law, and there are arguments for this, then Europe must clarify that it is possible. If Europe is not in a position to change this in the short term, then according to Article 74 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, we have the right, and now in my opinion, the duty, in the circumstances, to declare a national emergency with regard to refugees. This would give the national law of the Federal Republic of Germany priority over European law. That's what the EU treaty says, and in my opinion, in our opinion, this must now be actually invoked.
Chancellor Scholz believes that cooperation with the CDU on migration policy is possible, but he is clearly not contemplating kicking EU law into touch.
Our international treaties apply. The rules of the European Union apply. What our constitution prescribes applies. And then a range of practical suggestions are welcome.
In related news, the leader of Austria's far-right Austrian Freedom Party, or FPO, Herbert Kickl, has been quoted as saying that human rights legislation involves strange legal structures that prevent us from doing what is necessary. Stefan Schulmeister, a lawyer and economist who lectures at the University of Vienna, interprets this quote for our Austrian partner station Agora.
Nicht nur Kickl, sondern alle rechtsextremen Parteien.
Not only Kickl, but all far-right parties in Europe currently derive their strength from focusing on the threat posed by refugees, asylum seekers or foreigners in general. In other words, pitting groups of people against each other. And of course, human rights are a thorn in the side of these political groups, because human rights assume that all people have the same basic rights. The basic idea of the extreme right, however, is that this should not be the case. Instead, Austrians should come first, our people, and so on. In the most extreme version, which the FPO supports, all foreigners should be ultimately resettled. That is known as remigration. It is an almost unbelievable plan, which Herbert Kickl also supports.
Letztlich ausgesiedelt werden.
Influential right-wing extremists work by systematically picking up on the fears that are rife in society and whipping them up, says Austrian social psychologist and psychotherapist Klaus Ottomeyer. In May, Ottomeyer drew up an open letter from 300 psychologists and psychotherapists calling for the prevention of right-wing extremism. So what is the psychology of far-right discourse? Ottomeyer explains by quoting two 1940s researchers, Löwenthal and Gutermann, who studied the so-called demagogues who were whipping up right-wing fervour in the USA at the time.
Die haben gesagt, ja, diese Leute haben ein ungeheures Gespür für Ängste, die in der Gesellschaft...
They said yes, these people have a tremendous feel for the fears that are swirling around in society. Fears of being replaced by other groups, fears of immigrants, fears of relegation, fears of disadvantage, and so on. Even back then, there were probably fears that the family, the patriarchal family, would disintegrate.
Die patriarchalische Familie sich auflöst.
He goes on to draw a correlation between how a psychologist works, drawing out a patient's fears to help overcome them, and how a political extremist uses similar techniques to prey upon these very fears.
Ein Demagoge, ein erfolgreicher Demagoge, eben auch
A demagogue, a successful demagogue, has a therapist's sense for various fears. He picks up on them. He goes around like a hoover, picking up what people are afraid of, what worries them, and then mixes in paranoid fears, fears of persecution, scapegoat theories. This hoover absorbs and mixes it all, real fears, as psychoanalysis would call them, mixed with neurotic paranoid fears, fears of persecution that come from within us. And then there is a kind of mudslinger combined with the hoover, a mechanism that hurls accusations and insults at certain people or groups of people who find it hard to defend themselves.
sich kaum dagegen wehren können.
So we'll leave you with that thought. You may note that we haven't been very successful ourselves in achieving gender balance this week. We'll strive to do better next week. Join us then.